Hello friends, my name is Lauren and I am an enthusiastic amateur gardener.
I'm Joe and I'm a botanical horticulturalist.
And welcome to our channel. Come along and join us on our plant journey. So, as this spring has blessed us with many sunny weekends, we have been outside doing a lot of repotting, and one of the things we noticed is that the Pilea that we have seemed to have totally outgrown their little pots. So we'll be repotting these little chaps. They're not so little anymore though, not considering the size they were when you got them, Joe.
Yeah, I got these from a friend when I was house-sitting his plants when he went away on holiday. I introduced his plants, he gave me about 20 to look after.
As if you go on holiday and you're like, hey buddy, could you look after a few of my plants? Oh sure, just like bring your probably 1 or 2 plants over. Your whole house was covered in them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it both made me feel inadequate for the present plants that I own, and yeah, it was like a fun new project. I immediately introduced all of his plants to fertilizer, which apparently they'd never experienced before, and lo and behold, his Pilea produced like 5 babies.
Oh wow, that's so cool. So did you just sneak the babies out, or did you ask him?
No, I asked permission. Yeah, I wouldn't want to take anything which didn't really belong to me, so... And yeah, they weren't actually his plants, apparently they were his partners, so I need to ask his partner's permission.
Oh wow, well, I'm glad it worked out, because now we have 2 beautiful plants growing from tiny little babies. So the Pilea, which his full name is Pilea how do you say that? Pilea
So Pilea peperomioides.
Pilea peperomioides, that's a mouthful. Has a lot of common names though, which is Chinese money plant, friendship plant, and the pass it on plant, which given how often it produces new plants, it doesn't surprise me that it's called any of these things because it grows so many that you just have to pass them on to different friends and family all the time. They're pretty easy to look after though, aren't they?
Relatively easy. They can be quite tricky on the watering front. They can be quite fussy in regards to, they don't like overwatering at all, so they like to be watered when dry, not too dry. The key sort of like tip in regards to watering is you can see the leaves are kind of thick and fleshy, so you can see it's quite succulent, so they're quite good at holding moisture. You probably only once a week, maybe once every half week, depending on your sunny aspect.
And what's a sign of whether the plant is overwatered? Does it have any like telltale signs?
Yeah, well, it'll generally look quite unhappy. The leaves tend to curl inwards from the leaf margins, but that's, you can see it on some of ours in the video. The leaves on the apical growth, which is the apex, are like wilting inwards sort of thing, and that's a sign of overwatering, so we've eased off there.
Yeah, since lockdown I've been paying way too much attention to the plants, and some of them are not enjoying that actually. Some have thrived, some like the Pileas are like, mother why? Mother, please stop feeding me. But the Pilea are like really popular plants, especially I noticed when I was doing some digging for factoids a few years ago, in America especially. They were incredibly popular, and lots of YouTubers and vloggers from around that time are saying about how the lengths that they went to get these plants.
Yeah, so I've read a similar thing. So in the 80s, the Pilea was like the garden magazine plant of choice, much like the variegated Monstera, Alba variegata. These plants went for up to £50 each and more. Like, it was impossible to get hold of these plants, which is kind of ironic considering how easy they are to propagate.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you think that the garden centers and plant shops would have been able to produce 1 million of them and, you know, sell the little ones quite often, because I swear that they're putting out new babies every few weeks. You'll see just another little head just like pop up out the soil.
The babies, or officially botanically propagule.
Propagule.
Yeah, propagule.
Okay, that's a new one for
Like
me.
a stem, leaf, or bud which can be separated from the mother plant to produce new plant material. So what you want to be looking out for is sprouts. They normally develop from the stem underground and then poke out once they're about 3 centimeters big. Depending on the color of your pot, if you've got a transparent pot, you might be able to see them coming up more readily. And a nice surprise, by the time they reach the surface of the pot, they've often got little leaflets already forming.
Yeah, that's how I think it's the easiest to tell, is because the green of the leaves is so bright, and then when it's obviously like poking through the dark soil, you're like, oh, another one's arisen, it's time to take it out. And the Pilea that we had were kind of overdue repotting, not because they were getting pretty big for the pots they were in, but also because especially one of them, the larger one, had produced so many new little growths, and we had already just taken one out, I think like not even a few weeks ago. We decided to take them, well, while we're repotting them, and trim them off. You know, not all of them were in the readiest condition to be moved on. Some of them hadn't produced little leaves leaves yet, but it was their time.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't necessarily need to propagate the little sprouts which come up as well. If you want a multi-stemmed Pilea, then you can just let it do its thing.
So if you didn't remove the little babies, would they produce a set stem eventually of a similar size to the main one?
Yeah, they're essentially just clones of the mother plant. It'll be much smaller than the mother plant, but it'll be identical. Obviously, as the plants get bigger, they'll be outcompeting each other in terms of nutrients and stuff, so they may not do the best in the long term, but if you repot and go oversized, then yeah, it should be fine.
So when you've identified that there are babies there to be removed, how would you go about then ensuring they are removed and they're not stressed too much and they're cleanly taken off? Because obviously we understand, or at least I think I understand, that if you don't get a clean cut off, then that can cause problems for the plants later on down the line.
The cutting tool used, it's really important that it's really sharp and not blunt, and obviously sterile. If you've been, so you'd use secateurs, snips, or you can even use a pair of scissors as long as they're all sharp. So if you've been cutting any other plant material, it's ideal if you rinse your secateurs in fairy liquid or ethanol prior to doing a new cut. That will prevent the transmission of any fungal pathogens or viruses to be transplanted into the Pilea. Sharp tools are a must, and you just want to try and cut the propagule as close to the mother plant stem as possible. You want as big a sized sprout as possible. The bigger it is, the more chance it is going to be able to succeed and turn into a nice and healthy plant. So you ideally want something between 3 and 5 centimeters. If you've got a tiny little sprout and it's like half a centimeter in size, it's best just to let it grow and develop, and you're just going to stand a higher chance of success, really.
Yeah, we did get one of those tiny ones by mistake, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, with careful watering, and that's the most important thing, really. Careful watering and attention. There's really no reason why you can't propagate these little things. It's just slightly harder.
So once we've removed these little sprouts, we actually, propagules, sorry, I prefer to call them sprouts. Once we've removed them, what we decided to do is pop them straight into some soil. So it's the same soil that we were planting the other Pilea in. We used a combination of, it's kind of like a hodgepodge combination of different pots. So Joe got like 20 tea light candle holders from a charity shop for like £1 like last year, and they're ceramic. So he ended up drilling a bunch of holes in the bottom for good drainage, and we just potted a bunch into there. We also have some tiny plastic pots. Plastic pots is one thing that we do enjoy potting plants into, because when it comes to repotting, which is inevitably always sooner rather than later, it's much easier and less stressful on the plant to be able to just kind of squeeze the outside of the plant pot to loosen up the soil a bit and then slide that plant out. We found that in ceramic pots, planting directly into ceramic or even terracotta, it can be a bit more of a struggle to get the plants to come out. Although I would say that a terracotta pot seems like not a bad idea for a Pilea because of its moisture wicking tendencies. So the Pilea is less likely to get overwatered, which it really hates.
Terracotta's got a great sort of like attribute in that breathable texture, so it leaks moisture faster outside the pot to allow the plant inside to be drier for longer. So with succulents like Pileas, it's a really good idea to pre-put them in terracotta if you're a bit worried on the watering side of things.
The tiny little ceramic tea light holders we found dry out quite quickly, so while that might not necessarily be a problem for a Pilea, it's good to keep an eye on plants planted in stuff like that, especially when they're so small, because obviously the water evaporates and moves out of those pots a lot quicker than it does a larger pot. It pays to keep an eye on those plants a bit more. We choose to put our sprouts straight into the soil, but I've read a lot online that people really like to water propagate plants.
It's quite an easy method because it's so accessible. Everyone's got water and like a little beaker to put something in. Yeah, it's a great method and it's nice to try. I feel like you can have more success by propagating sprouts or nubbins directly into the soil because the soil has moisture retentive properties. You're less likely to have the propagule succumb to rot because you're changing the environment very dramatically from the soil environment to the water environment. And as well, I've done some research into it, and the water roots that develop as a result of the water propagation, they're actually much weaker and they tend to die back once they are planted into soil finally. So in fact, whilst the soil propagation, you can't really see what's going on, you can't see if it's developing roots or not, it is a more secure method and it allows the plant to acclimatize better to your your home environment.
I find that really interesting given just how popular water propagation is online, not just for things like the little Pilea, but for stem cuttings of larger plants like Monstera. You see online every single Monstera listing is like, and when you receive this plant, place it in water and change the water every day and leave it in water for a month. It's kind of terrifying, the prospect of just leaving something in there, so we would obviously recommend just pot them up straight away. So once we have propagated the little ones and, you know, we've managed to repot the big ones by kind of loosening up the roots, potting them in the new soil mix, and then the bigger pots, is there anything to the actual constitution of the soil that we're using?
The soil mix that we use, you want to make sure that it's moisture retentive but also well draining. You really want a mix of organic matter, a bit of sand, perhaps perlite. It's up to the grower as to what they use and what's available at their stores. I quite like using coir and perlite mix, at least in work anyway, because the coir is like a great substitute for peat. It's a sustainable substitute. It's coir, which is made out of coconut husks. There, it does have a carbon footprint much larger than peat in that peat's locally extracted in Scotland or Ireland, but then the coconut husks are taken from Sri Lanka, but I digress.
So it swings and roundabouts really in terms of what you use, but we tend to, when we look at mixes, we choose peat-free options because it is more environmentally friendly for the UK to not dredge our nice woodlands and moors.
These plants are quite forgiving, so you don't need to worry too much.
And that's kind of how we take care of our Pileas. We've grown them from tiny, tiny wee babies themselves to them producing their own little babies and repot the babies, and then hopefully once this lockdown's over we can go meet some friends and give them all some Pilea because we have so many now. And yeah, so those are things to look out for if you're deciding to pick up a Pilea yourself. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. We hope you found it helpful, whether you've got Pileas yourself that need replanting because they've gotten a bit too big, or whether they've got their own little sprouts on the way, ready to pot into new plants to give friends. If you have any questions about today's video, just drop us a comment below, or you can get in touch with us through Joe's Instagram account, which is Fronds and Flowers. And we look forward to seeing you for the next video. Until then, happy gardening!